What if you woke up every morning not knowing if you'll find enough food to eat or what you might have to sell, maybe even something illegal, just to get through the day? In Cuba, this is the harsh reality many people face. For women, the pressure is even greater. Maintaining their beauty becomes a real challenge when something as simple as hair dye can cost a large part of their monthly income. And often, it can only be found on the black market. The streets are filled with people selling anything they can, making survival a constant hustle. And when a stranger offers to exchange your money, you can't help but wonder, who can you really trust in a place like this? Stay with us as we uncover the raw, untold truth of life in Cuba, an experience you won't find in the typical travel guides. Cuba, an island rich in history, culture, and contradictions. Known for its beautiful beaches, vibrant streets filled with vintage cars, and friendly locals, it's a place that captivates the imagination. But beneath the stunning scenery lies a much more complicated reality. To tourists, Cuba often feels like a time capsule where you can sip a mojito on the shores of Varadero or wander through the lively streets of Havana. The colorful buildings, old cars, and salsa music create a nostalgic atmosphere. It's a country that draws in those eager to experience a culture shaped by decades of history and a unique political system. But what most visitors never see is the daily life of Cubans. The reality under the surface is one of struggle, sacrifice, and restraint. It's a life far removed from the freedom and comforts that most people are accustomed to in other parts of the world. For Cubans, survival means dealing with shortages, government controls, and a lack of essential goods. While tourists relax in all-inclusive resorts and enjoy carefully crafted experiences, Cubans live a different life, one where food is rationed, speaking out can be dangerous, and opportunities are few. One of the most surprising aspects of life in Cuba is the constant presence of long lines and scarcity. It's not just waiting for a cup of coffee, it's waiting for basic necessities, sometimes for hours. In the La Victoria neighborhood of Havana, Cuba, you'll find Plaza de Carlos III, one of the largest shopping malls in the city. From the outside, it might look like any other busy shopping center, but once you step inside, you'll see something quite different. Long lines of people sit and wait patiently, some even stretching around the block, all hoping for a chance to enter the store. These people aren't waiting for luxury items, they're waiting to buy food, toiletries, and other essential goods. In Cuba, where scarcity is a part of everyday life, getting the basics is not as easy as strolling into a store. It often requires hours of waiting, and even then, there's no guarantee that the item you need will be in stock when it's your turn. The ability to wait for hours without complaint speaks to the resilience of the Cuban people. This routine, far from being a minor inconvenience, has become a way of life. For many of us, accustomed to the ease of online shopping and instant access, it's difficult to imagine such a reality. This scarcity also shapes social interactions, the rhythm of daily life, and even dating. Imagine planning a date, but first you need to stand in line for hours just to buy essentials. In such a context, time becomes a valuable commodity. For Cubans, waiting is simply part of life. In Havana and other areas where resources are limited, patience isn't just a virtue, it's an essential skill for survival. Have you ever had to wait for hours to get something as simple as food? How do you think scarcity influences daily life in Cuba? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When you explore Cuba, one of the first things you'll notice is the constant hustle of its people. This isn't just about side jobs or making a little extra money. It's a necessity in a country where scarcity shapes daily life. In Cuba, government-run stores rarely offer the variety or abundance you might expect. Instead, most goods are in short supply, and what's available can change from one week to the next. This scarcity has given birth to an underground economy where people sell anything they can get their hands on. It's common to see someone sitting on their porch, reselling items they've bought from abroad by relatives. These informal markets are a vital part of Cuban life. Many people rely on local vendors to obtain basic goods that can't be found through official channels. As you walk through the streets, you might spot a woman selling laundry detergent she bought in bulk, or a man offering imported clothes he got from a relative living overseas. At first, it may seem unusual to see people selling from their homes or on the street. but soon you'll realize it's just part of how things function here. Someone's porch turns into a small marketplace, and casual conversations about where to find certain products become a regular part of daily life. It's a way of making do with what's available, of adapting to a reality shaped by scarcity. In the past 5 years, people have adopted this approach to scarcity. For many Cubans, this system fosters a sense of community and ingenuity. It's not just about trading goods. It's about trust, connection, and navigating life's challenges together in a place where shortages are the norm. Before we continue, I have a quick favor to ask. If you could, please take just 10 seconds to hit the subscribe button. It really helps our channel grow, and we appreciate it so much. In return, my team and I promise to keep improving the content just for you. Do we have a deal? For many women in Cuba, beauty is much more than vanity. It's a key part of their identity. Cuban culture places great value on appearance, and women take pride in looking their best. However, in a country where basic goods are often scarce, staying fashionable and well-groomed is no simple feat. Take something as basic as hair dye. In Cuba, a product that might be considered inexpensive in other countries can cost up to a third of the average monthly salary. This becomes a significant expense when you consider the limited incomes that most people earn. Luxury items like makeup and skincare products are often priced far beyond what many Cubans can afford. To manage these challenges, Cuban women have learned to be resourceful, creative, and patient. They might save up for months to buy a single product, or turn to informal networks to find beauty essentials. Despite these difficulties, Cuban women continue to look polished and beautiful. The reality for most Cuban women is that they often depend on relatives living abroad to send them money or goods. Without this support, even basic items become nearly impossible to obtain. Families with loved ones in places like the United States, Europe, or Latin America often rely on these connections to send critical supplies, from food and clothes to beauty products and medicine. For women, this reliance means balancing many roles. They manage the home, care for children, and make sure their families have everything they need, all while depending on remittances from relatives. In many households, Cuban women are the primary earners, using every available resource to maintain both the family's well-being and their own appearance. How do you think their resilience in the face of adversity shapes their sense of identity in daily life? Let's dive into the untold challenges they face and honor their strength and perseverance. Share your thoughts in the comments below. One issue that resonates deeply with parents across Cuba is feeding their children. In schools, the quality and quantity of children's meals is a constant concern for parents, as the government's ability to provide adequate, nutritious food has been stretched thin for decades. Even when parents sacrifice, giving up their own meals to ensure their children have enough to eat, the situation remains dire, and at times heartbreaking. A typical school lunch might be something as basic as bread with corn tortillas, far from the well-rounded meals that families in other countries might take for granted. Yet even this simple meal is becoming harder to come by. Basic food items like eggs, once a cheap and easy source of protein, have skyrocketed in price. A carton of eggs can cost anywhere from 3,000 to 3,500 pesos, or roughly $10. To put that in perspective, this amount can equal nearly a month's salary for many Cubans. In Cuba, where decades of economic struggles and scarcity have shaped daily life, the prices of basic goods offer a glimpse into the hardships people face. When you visit a Cuban market, you might be shocked to learn that something as simple as a pound of pork can cost more than 1,000 pesos. At first, this seems hard to grasp, especially when you consider that 1,000 pesos represents a large portion of the average Cuban's monthly income. These steep prices force families to make difficult decisions. Many turn to cheaper options, like processed meats, to stretch their budget and save a little more. It's common to see people selling everyday items like plastic bags or homemade goods just to raise enough money for a few pounds of meat. The shortage of basic foods like pork, flour, and bread highlights a deeper issue: the struggle to obtain even the most essential products. Take bread, for example. It's a basic staple in Cuban households, yet the bread you'll find in stores today often comes from the government-run food rationing system known as handbooks. Even then, bread can be scarce, At times, its weight has been reduced simply because there wasn't enough flour to meet demand. In some parts of Cuba, people wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning just to buy a loaf of bread. Long before the sun rises, they line up at bakeries, hoping to grab a share of the limited supply. This isn't a rare inconvenience, it's an everyday reality for many families. Despite these challenges, Cubans remain incredibly resilient. Whether they're standing in line for bread or making do with processed meats, they understand that they're all facing the same struggles. For many Cubans, the day starts with one main goal: finding food. It's not as simple as walking to the nearest store. Instead, it's a daily quest that requires patience and often a bit of luck. They wake up with a list of tasks that aren't about thriving, but simply surviving another day. The search for food begins early, and there are no guarantees. Prices are steep, supplies are limited, and most goods are out of reach for those without outside help. When local markets run dry, many Cubans turn to family or friends abroad for support. Remittances, money sent from Cubans living in places like the United States or Europe, are crucial. Stores called MSMEs and MLCs, where prices are sky high, rely heavily on this aid. But for most Cubans, the prices at these stores feel from another planet, leaving them dependent on relatives overseas. These stores often seem designed to squeeze as much money as possible from foreign boyfriends, family, or anyone willing to send cash to keep their loved ones fed. While you might see wealthier neighborhoods in Havana, most Cubans live in much more modest conditions. The economic gap is huge and touches every part of life, from the food they eat to the homes they live in. In Cuba, everyday life requires certain precautions, especially when it comes to food and water. While in many places clean drinking water is something we take for granted, Cuba presents a different reality. The treatment of tap water can vary. On some days it's heavily chlorinated, so much so that you can taste the chemicals, leaving a lingering, unpleasant feeling in your mouth. On other days, the water supply can be contaminated due to poor infrastructure and water shortages. Cubans, having grown accustomed to inconsistent water quality, have more resilient stomachs. But for visitors, drinking tap water can quickly lead to stomach issues, or worse. The safest option is to stick to bottled mineral water. Cuban cuisine, much like its culture, relies on staples like flour, sugar, and fat. However, there's a less appetizing side to the food scene you should be aware of. In many local restaurants or street markets, the same cooking oil is reused repeatedly. This not only alters the taste, but can also pose a serious health risk. To stay safe, stick to reputable restaurants that maintain high standards of hygiene and food quality. You don't have to splurge on expensive, upscale places or dine where high-profile visitors like Obama have eaten. But be cautious. Even well-established restaurants can face supply shortages, depending on the country's ongoing economic challenges. Transportation in Cuba is more than just a way to get from one place to another. It's a journey filled with challenges and risks. In Cuba, reliable public transportation, like traditional buses, is in short supply. Instead, many Cubans rely on old repurposed trucks for long-distance travel. These vehicles, often crammed with cargo, carry passengers across provinces for around $2. However, these trucks are far from safe. They are usually outdated, poorly maintained, and prone to accidents, with Cuba's rough roads only adding to the danger. The private taxi system might seem like a safer and more convenient alternative, but caution is advised. Opt for a state-run taxi or arrange transportation through a trusted local. While you may pay a little more, that $5 could be the difference between a smooth ride and a risky situation. As they say, prevention is always better than dealing with the consequences. Now, let's talk about a different kind of journey: internal migration within Cuba. Many people are drawn to Havana for its opportunities, searching for a better life. However, for many internal migrants, life in Havana can be tough. Migrants arriving in the capital without proper documentation often find themselves living in a kind of legal gray area. These individuals, seeking better job prospects or just a way to make ends meet, face not only discrimination, but also challenges with housing and legal restrictions. For those looking to explore the more hidden side of Cuban life, from gossip culture to the impact of economic hardships on relationships, there's much to discover. In Cuban culture, gossip, or chisme, is far more than idle chatter. It's woven into the fabric of daily life. With close-knit communities, news spreads quickly, and it often feels like everyone knows everyone's business. Locals speak of a deep-rooted jealousy that runs through Cuban society. The constant observation from neighbors and friends means that privacy is a rare luxury. Your personal life, from relationships to work, is under constant scrutiny. For foreigners, this culture of gossip can make it difficult to stay under the radar. It seems like everyone knows your movements, whether you want them to or not. The country's economic struggles have reshaped personal relationships, particularly in the realm of dating. Financial insecurity has shifted priorities, placing material needs at the forefront. Women facing their own financial hardships often seek relationships that offer economic stability. Many Cuban men have noticed this change, with love often taking a backseat to financial security. Exploring Cuba offers a unique perspective on how closely the country is tied to tourism, a relationship that shapes nearly every aspect of life on the island. In places like Old Havana, the streets are alive with the sounds of salsa music and the footsteps of visitors, creating a vibrant scene that tells the story of Cuba's history and its deep reliance on tourism. This dependence brings both benefits and challenges. When tourism thrives, businesses, both official and unofficial, flourish. Local artisans sell handmade crafts, food, and souvenirs, while many people find ways to make money through informal or even unregulated activities. One local remarked, "Old Havana is one of the best preserved areas, and it truly shows how vital tourism is to Cuba's economy." In recent years, Cuba has seen a noticeable shift in its economy, with the rise of new markets, particularly from countries like Russia. The appearance of Russian stores, which some compare to large international chains like Costco, highlights the growing influence of foreign nations. If you've visited Varadero, one of Cuba's top beach destinations, you may have noticed an increase in bilingual signs, with Russian now paired alongside Spanish. There are even rumors that a Russian supermarket is set to open, offering everything from household items to imported meats. As one visitor noted, it's fascinating to see how these stores are emerging and how the Russian market is making its way into Cuba. If you've been to Varadero, you'll notice that many signs are now in Russian. There's even talk of a Russian butcher shop opening soon. With the arrival of these new businesses, the level of surveillance has also grown. Shoppers in these stores may observe more security cameras and restricted areas, where taking photos or videos is prohibited. Cuba's unique dual currency system can be confusing at first, but understanding how it works is key to navigating the country. In Cuba, two main currencies are in circulation: the Cuban peso, CUP, and the MLC, moneda libremente convertible, often referred to as the magnetic stripe currency. The Cuban peso is the official currency and is used for most daily transactions like buying food, drinks, or visiting local attractions. It's the currency Cubans primarily use in their everyday lives. The MLC, however, functions more like foreign currency. It's essentially a digital version of foreign money, such as euros or US dollars, loaded onto a magnetic stripe card. This card is used at select stores and businesses, particularly those selling imported goods or catering to tourists. The MLC card is essential for buying many high-demand items that are often hard to find, but unlike the Cuban peso, it's not a physical currency. Everything is digital. As one local puts it, in Cuba, you have two currencies: the MLC, which is the foreign currency on a card, and the Cuban peso, which is what you'll use most of the time for meals and sightseeing. One of the biggest challenges in Cuba is dealing with the fluctuating exchange rates between the foreign currencies, Cuban pesos, and MLC. The official exchange rate is set by the government, but on the black market, the rates can be much more favorable. This often tempts tourists or locals looking to get the most for their money. One traveler mentioned, "You'll find many people on the streets offering to change money for you, but if you don't know them, who do you complain to if something goes wrong?" This is wise advice for anyone unfamiliar with the local economy. While black market exchanges may offer a better rate, they carry risks such as counterfeit money, incorrect amounts, or even being cheated altogether. When exchanging money in Cuba, it's safest to go through reliable sources. Official exchange offices or hotels typically offer a fair rate. While it may not match the black market's rates, the peace of mind is well worth the trade-off. You won't have to worry about counterfeit bills or shady deals, and you'll know exactly how much you're getting. Havana, with its vibrant streets, historic architecture, and lively atmosphere, often captures the imagination of visitors. However, beneath its surface, there is an issue that many locals face daily: waste management, or the lack of it. In the heart of Havana, especially outside the tourist hotspots, waste management is an ongoing struggle. While areas that cater to tourists are meticulously cleaned, giving the impression of a pristine city, many residential neighborhoods reveal a stark contrast. Trash piles up on street corners, sometimes left to sit for days or even weeks. For those who live in these neighborhoods, this situation is a harsh reality. Trash near their homes, schools, and workplaces is a constant concern, one that directly threatens their health. As one local resident shared, the problem of trash is everywhere, but it's hidden from tourists. In the residential areas, the piles of waste are hard to ignore, and they put everyone's health at risk. The Los Angeles Times wrote, "This contrast between the well-maintained, tourist-friendly parts of Havana and the neglected areas for locals offers a glimpse into the deeper challenges Cubans face." While the streets of Old Havana and the scenic Malecon beachfront may look beautiful, a short walk through the city's less traveled areas exposes a different side of the story. However, this issue is not the same across all of Havana. Some parts of the city are more affected by the waste problem than others. The wealthier neighborhoods or areas with high tourist traffic often receive more attention from the government. In these regions, trash is regularly collected and the streets are kept clean. But in the poorer, less visited areas, the situation can be much worse. In areas like Centro Habana and parts of La Lisa, delays in garbage collection are common. Overflowing bins and makeshift dumps are often seen along the streets. For these residents, the lack of consistent waste management services has come to represent the larger economic struggles that Cuba faces on a daily basis. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. I'm sure you'll love this content. Comment below about the next country you want to see featured on our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Thanks for joining us. Leave a comment, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting videos. See you in the next video.